So, what is your name?
My name is Priva Haangandu.
Okay, and you are here in Pittsburgh, and where are you from?
I come from Zambia and I work for Jubilee Zambia in partnership with the Jubilee USA.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, why is it that you are here to oppose the G20?
Well, I think we'd like to understand that, as you can see around a lot of posters, the world is in Pittsburgh, and that is not true. That is a misrepresentation of the reality. It's not the world in Pittsburgh. It's a group of 20 in Pittsburgh. And I think the great opposition comes from the point of view that whose interests are we serving when you're meeting in Pittsburgh this time? The G20 has made a lot of promises to the developing world, most of which they have not fulfilled at all. And I think the interest at the moment, or the concern, is that we'd like to see that a lot of issues that represent the poor people in the developing world are brought to the table. Without that, then there's no legitimacy for the G20 meeting in Pittsburgh.
Okay. So, you can you see the way that the G20's decisions have impacted Zambia?
Well, Zambia is one of the low-income countries, one of the least developed countries. Zambia is ranked as 166 out of 177 poorest countries in the world, according to the United Nations Human Development Index. And so if the needs of the poorest countries are not represented, the voices of the poor countries are not represented, then how do we see the benefit of the G20 meeting in Pittsburgh? And precisely, I think it is very important for us to understand that the G20 meets and makes policies that are binding not only to the 19 most industrialized economies, including the European Union, but whatever they decide has an impact on the developing countries. It has an impact on the poorest people of this world. And so Zambia, being one of the small players in the global economics, small as it might be, minute as it might be, I think it has a lot of whatever is decided at the G20 has a lot of impact on the economy of Zambia, on the people of Zambia, on the poor people of every other developing country in this world.
So, great. So, yeah, it's quite clear that the G20's decision-making structure in general, at its core, is very undemocratic. In terms of the individual decisions that have been made regarding funding the IMF, how do you feel that that impacts Zambia? And how do you feel that it impacts Africa as a whole?
Well, if you remember very well, one of the big promises that was made as a bailout package in the last G20 meeting in April in London this year was that they're going to provide this huge sum of money to the IMF. And we know that a lot of that money went into loans to the developing countries. And I think the idea is that the developing countries do not have, in most cases, it's a very big misrepresentation that they have enough capacities to service loans. Every single loan that comes to the developing country is a commitment of the future taxes and revenues that are going to be raised domestically in these countries. And therefore, when we are saying we are trying to see the developing countries attain the Millennium Development Goals, so where are we if we are giving them loans, perpetually enslaving them into debt servicing, and at the same time would like them to meet the Millennium Development Goals? So there is an internal conflict, precisely a conflict of reasoning there. If you want somebody to attain Millennium Development Goals, and at the same time you're siphoning from them resources that are supposed to be, poured into the same efforts of Millennium Development Goals achievements, then what are you saying? You are saying we are giving you $1 and you're taking $2 away from the same person, and that is not reasonable at all.
Right. So you had talked about exactly, the impacts of these previous actions and so forth. In terms of what you saw when you visited a very rural part of, I think you said Namibia?
Zambia.
Oh. So when you visited this very rural part of Zambia, what did you see?
Well, what you see is, according to the national statistics that we have in Zambia, we have 65% of the Zambian people living in poverty. And you know, that is simply a demographic figure for people that understand economics, but it has a human face to it. It means 65% of the Zambian people do not have access to clean drinking water. They do not have access, or they do not afford education fees, do not have access to health facilities, and they will not have 3 meals in a day. 65% of the Zambian people. And that is just a tip of an iceberg. There are a lot more countries in this world that do not have similar kind of capacity. And I think when we are saying the G20 is meeting in Pittsburgh, so what is the voice of all these people? What is the concern for all these people that are living under such impoverished conditions? So we are saying, can the G20 put at the table the concerns of all these people? I've seen people wearing t-shirts, 30,000 children are dying every day from hunger, and I think that is a concern. If people can go without medication, if people can go without food, in a world that simply needs redistribution, a world that has so much to feed everybody and does not have enough, in Mahatma Gandhi's own words, there is not enough for one man's selfishness in this world, but there's too much if everything was equitably distributed.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And what are you marching in the streets this week?
As you have seen, we've already started the marching, and I think we are sending forth a message to the world leaders as they come to Pittsburgh, that the poor people of this world have a concern and would like their voices to be heard in the meeting in Pittsburgh this time around as they meet, as opposed to making simply institutional commitments. Would like them to make commitments that resonate with the realities on the ground. The poor people that are suffering, they need a response. What we need are not loans. We need more just structures of trade, more just structures of aid delivered and really delivered, and not only promised to meet the needs of the people, the suffering people in Africa and in other parts of the continent. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so when you go back to Zambia, you are going to, what will you see that will give you hope?
Well, what will give me hope is to see to it, actually the hope begins here. I'd like to see a situation whereby the G20 owns up and says we have failed in the past. We have not given enough voice to the poor people in this world. We have served only the interests of the rich people. We know that the history of Africa and many other developing countries is a history of perpetual slavery in terms of not only slave trade and colonialism, but also neo-colonialism, where they are the recipients and the victims of bad policies that are made at the level of the G20. And we'd like to see a situation whereby there's an equilibrium in the way that issues are addressed, and that will give me a lot of hope that the poor people are put on the table and discussed, that the needs of the world are put at the table and discussed, as opposed to paying lip service to aid, lip service to the IMF, lip service to the World Trade Organization. We want to see concrete action that is going to get the huge numbers of African people and Asian people and Latin American people who are still living in abject poverty come out of the poverty and enjoy the benefits of this very rich world, very rich globe.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Okay.